A police drone scanning these remote mountains captured footage that has 3 separate DNA labs questioning everything we know about human evolution. 18-inch footprints with impossible gait patterns and hair samples that are 95% human, but contain genetic markers that don't exist in any documented species. What started as routine forest surveillance has become the most compelling evidence yet that we're not alone in these woods, and the creatures aren't just hiding from us. They're studying us. But here's what terrifies me most. If these beings have been selectively making contact with research teams for decades, transforming them in ways science can't explain, what exactly are they preparing us for? I never thought I'd find proof that monsters are real. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I lead forest research teams. 3 weeks ago, we came to these mountains to count animals and study trees. What we found changed everything. The first sign was a footprint in the mud near our camp. My hands shook as I measured it. 18 inches long, bigger than any human foot I'd ever seen. But something was wrong with how deep it pressed into the ground. The heel mark was too light, the toe marks were too heavy. When our team's walking expert looked at the photos, she went pale. "This makes no sense," she whispered. "No primate walks like this. The stride is impossible. It's like something that weighs 800 pounds but steps like it weighs nothing." 2 days later, we found hair caught on a broken branch. Long, coarse strands that felt almost human, but not quite right. The color shifted from brown to black to red, depending on how the light hit it. I sealed the samples in sterile containers and shipped them to 3 different labs. The results came back identical and impossible. All 3 labs confirmed the same thing. The DNA was 95% human. But the other 5% contained genetic markers that don't exist anywhere in science. Not in humans, not in apes, not in any known species on Earth. "We've run the tests 6 times, the lab director told me over the phone. "The equipment isn't broken. The samples aren't contaminated. We just don't know what we're looking at." Walking deeper into the forest, we found more signs. Branches broken at exactly 8 feet high, snapped clean with tremendous force. Rocks arranged in perfect circles and complex patterns that nature could never create. The arrangements looked almost like language, like someone was trying to tell us something. Our cameras started acting strange. During the day, they worked perfectly, recording every bird and squirrel. But at night, they malfunctioned. The screens went black at exactly the same times. Yet our audio equipment kept working, picking up sounds that made my skin crawl. Deep, rumbling calls that echoed through the trees. Voices that sounded almost human but carried notes too low for human vocal cords. Then the headaches started. Sharp, stabbing pains that hit me whenever I got close to fresh evidence. The camp medic found nothing wrong with me. My blood pressure was normal. My vision was clear. But the pain grew worse each day, pulsing behind my eyes like a warning. Standing at the edge of a clearing yesterday, staring at another impossible footprint, I realized something that made my blood run cold. We weren't just studying these creatures. They were studying us back. Something strange was happening to my body. On day 12, I felt movement in the trees before I could see or hear anything. My team thought I was getting paranoid, but I was right every single time. I'd point to empty forest and whisper deer or hawk, and 30 seconds later, the animal would appear exactly where I predicted. My hearing changed too. Sounds became sharper, clearer. I could pick up 7 different types of calls echoing through the forest that my team couldn't even detect. Low rumbles, high whistles, clicking sounds like giant insects, and something that sounded almost like whispering. When I asked Marcus, our team biologist, if he heard the calls, he just stared at me with blank eyes. "What calls?" he said. But I knew he was lying. I could see it in the way his head tilted toward the sounds. Marcus was changing too, though he wouldn't admit it. He'd been our biggest doubter, always explaining away the evidence with scientific facts. But now I caught him sneaking to the forest edge at dawn. leaving plates of food on fallen logs, crackers, dried fruit, even candy bars from his personal stash. "Why are you feeding them?" I asked one morning. His face went red. "Feeding who? I'm not feeding anything." But the food disappeared every night. My body was adapting in ways that scared me. The mountain air was thin and cold, dropping to 30 degrees after sunset. The rest of my team bundled up in thick coats and heated sleeping bags, but I stopped feeling cold. My skin stayed warm even when frost covered our tent walls. I packed away my thermal gear and slept in just a t-shirt while my teammates shivered. The forest was starting to make sense to me in a way I couldn't explain. Paths appeared where I'd seen only random trees before. Subtle scratches on bark looked like direction markers. Piles of stones became boundary lines. Rock formations pointed toward water sources and safe camping spots. It was like reading a map written in a language I was just learning to understand. On day 18, I realized the others were changing too. Jenny, our photographer, started taking pictures of empty spaces, claiming she saw shadow shapes that didn't show up on film. Tom, our tracker, began walking in patterns that matched the stone arrangements we'd found, circling our camp 3 times each morning without seeming to notice. Late that night, as I lay in my sleeping bag listening to the forest, I understood something that made my heart race. The mysterious calls weren't random animal sounds. They had rhythm, pattern, meaning. They were conversations. And somehow, impossibly, I was starting to understand what they meant. The creatures weren't just watching us anymore. They were teaching us, changing us, preparing us for something we couldn't yet imagine. The truth hit me like lightning on day 21. These creatures weren't hiding from us because they were scared. They were running tests. Every piece of strange evidence, every impossible contradiction, every malfunction was planned. They were watching how we reacted, measuring our responses like scientists studying lab rats. The 18-inch footprints with impossible weight distribution weren't accidents. They were puzzles. The DNA results that showed 95% human with unknown markers weren't coincidences. They were filters. The creatures were sorting us, separating people who could accept impossible things from those who couldn't. I found proof in my research notes. Every team member who stayed curious about the contradictory evidence was still with us. But Dr. Williams, who kept insisting everything had normal explanations, had left on day 15, claiming he felt sick. Sarah, from the university, who refused to believe the DNA results, developed such bad headaches she flew home on day 12. We weren't the first people to make contact. I discovered this when I found old camping gear buried under leaves near the stone circles. Tattered backpacks from research teams that came before us. Some gear looked 5 years old. Some looked much older. When I checked the university records, I found references to 7 other research projects in these mountains over the past 20 years. Teams that came looking for wildlife data and never published their results. The physical changes in our bodies weren't side effects, they were upgrades. My enhanced hearing, my ability to sense movement, my temperature adaptation, my skill at reading forest patterns. The creatures were rewarding us for passing their tests by making us more like them, better suited for forest life, better able to survive in their world. Marcus found the most disturbing evidence. In a cave system 3 miles from camp, he discovered carved symbols on the walls. Human handprints pressed into clay alongside massive handprints that could only belong to the creatures. Messages written in English next to messages written in unknown symbols. The dates went back 40 years. "They're keeping records," Marcus whispered when he showed me the photos. "They're documenting every human they've made contact with." But the scariest discovery came when I realized what the creatures really were. They weren't missing links or evolutionary mistakes. The bone fragments we found, the tool marks on trees, the sophisticated communication patterns all pointed to the same impossible truth. They were parallel humans. A branch of human evolution that never left the forests, never built cities, never lost their connection to the natural world. While we developed technology and science, they developed different abilities, enhanced senses, natural camouflage, perfect adaptation to wilderness life. They weren't primitive. They were different. And they'd been watching our branch of humanity for thousands of years, occasionally selecting individuals to bridge the gap between our two worlds. We were their chosen ambassadors. On day 25, they finally showed themselves. I was alone at dawn, collecting water from the stream, when a shadow moved between the trees. 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair that seemed to shift colors like the samples we'd found. Its eyes were deeply human, but ancient, holding intelligence that made me feel like a child. It didn't speak with words. Instead, knowledge flowed directly into my mind. Images, feelings, understanding that bypassed language entirely. I saw the history of both human branches, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. My ancestors left the forests to build tools and cities. Their ancestors stayed, developing abilities we'd lost. Telepathic communication, perfect environmental adaptation. Bodies that could survive in any climate. The creature showed me why they'd chosen our team. Climate change was destroying their forest homes. Pollution was poisoning their water sources. Human expansion was pushing them into smaller and smaller territories. They needed ambassadors who could speak to both worlds, people who could help bridge the gap between forest dwellers and city dwellers. But the choice came with a price. Complete transformation meant leaving human society forever. We could become like them, gaining their abilities and their connection to the natural world, but we could never return to our old lives. Partial transformation meant keeping one foot in each world, serving as messengers between the species, but never fully belonging to either. Marcus chose complete transformation. I watched in amazement as his body changed, growing taller and stronger, his senses expanding beyond human limits. His skin took on the color-shifting quality of their hair. When he looked at me with his new eyes, I saw peace there, like he'd finally found where he belonged. Jenny and Tom chose partial transformation. They would return to the human world but carry the creature's messages. Their enhanced abilities would help them document the truth, slowly preparing other humans for contact. They would recruit more ambassadors, building a network of bridge people who could help both species survive. I made the hardest choice of all. I chose to stay human, but carry their secret. My job was to tell their story, to prepare the world for what was coming. The creatures gave me evidence that couldn't be ignored. Clear photographs, video footage, DNA samples with proper documentation. Proof that would force the scientific community to accept the truth. Standing at the forest edge on our final day, I understood the real purpose of our mission. We weren't just researchers who stumbled onto something amazing. We were carefully selected candidates for the most important job in human history. The two branches of humanity were reuniting after hundreds of thousands of years apart, and we were the ones chosen to make it happen. The police drone footage was just the beginning. The world was about to learn that we were never alone,